Those specific spots, when excited by solar winds, are able to simulate the aurora borealis in present time. Purple streaks throughout the sky, but have you ever wondered why they appear to be different colors? The Earth's atmosphere is full of solar gases. When the solar winds hit our magnetic field, the particles are trapped within the atmosphere and end up mixing in with the natural gases. The different atoms and molecules are hit with extra waves of energy, and as a result, they emit small bits of light. The gases in our atmosphere are located at different levels, and the colors vary based on the type and location. For the typical green color, oxygen is stimulated around 100 to 300 kilometers into the atmosphere. However, 300 to 400 kilometers into the altitude will result in red. Blue colors are a result of nitrogen, also at an altitude about 100 to 200 kilometers. However, if this gas is stimulated a mere 100 kilometers or lower, it can even come over as sort of like a purpley pink. While the aurora borealis is certainly captivating, the indigenous peoples of Canada viewed it in a whole different light. Get it? Get it? I said light like the northern lights. It was said that if you whistled at the northern lights, they would come down from the sky and slice your head off. After that, the aurora would sweep it up into the atmosphere and play football with it up across in the night sky. In other indigenous communities, such as the Dene, it had a much more significant meaning. These peoples viewed the lights as a midnight fire from their creator, and a collection of their loved ones' spirits up in the sky. Some other Inuit peoples grew up with a combination of both of these beliefs. The spirits of their ancestors come forth as the northern lights, kicking around a walrus skull or a human head in the sky. Joe Buffalo Child, a Dene man living in Yellowknife, is a well-known member of his community for spreading his culture towards tourists. He believes that Yellowknife is the best place in the world to watch the Northern Lights, and his spiritual connection towards them is incredibly strong. These next few clips here just reflect on a written interview between Joe Buffalo Child and a local news outlet. There was no filmed interview taken, so I just made a little skit out of what happened. I just thought it was important to reflect on present-day Indigenous peoples who still carry on the beliefs of their ancestors and are still in tune to their culture, just to see how much things have changed since the 1800s, 1900s to present day.
It's a connection between my culture and my grandparents, so it has a very special meaning for me.
Buffalo Child grew up without parents, so his grandparents stepped in and filled their shoes. His grandma always told him that when auroras are dancing quickly, it's a message from someone recently departed.
Someone from the other side is sending a message. I'm okay. No need to be sad anymore,
he said. He also believes the legend of the lights decapitating those who whistle at them, and it demonstrates the importance of having respect for the land and nature. The intensity of an aurora will depend on location, as well as how much of the particles from the sun hit our magnetic field. If there's more solar wind, the auroras will be stronger. If there's less, there won't be as much. Going back to the sun, sometimes large magnetic storms on the star will result in massive quantities of solar materials to bloom out towards space. They're pretty much just big floating blobs of energy, referred to as coronal mass ejections. These bubbles of solar mass typically reach Earth within 15 hours, and these ejections can result in more powerful and vibrant lights, as well as other natural phenomena. Mostly just weather surges. Sometimes, though, under the right circumstances, coronal mass ejections can overcharge the magnetosphere when they blow
The aurora
past Earth.
borealis was
This
named
is
by
what's known as
Galileo
geomagnetic
Galilei
storms.
in
These storms
1619
act
after
on
the Roman
quite a large
goddess of
scale,
dawn,
and they're
Aurora,
usually
and the
pretty
Greek
rare.
god of the north
This
wind,
surplus of
Horus,
energy travels down
reflects
Earth's
on the
magnetic
northern
field
lights
lines
in the northern
and into
poles,
the atmosphere.
while the aurora
Millions of amps are
australis,
pushed
the
into this
southern
area,
dawn lights,
creating the
occurs
most
in the
powerful
southern poles.
and beautiful auroras
When you think
with
of the
this
northern
giant
lights, you
supercharged
probably imagine
magnetosphere.
green, blue,
The shape of auroras are constantly changing, shifting and swaying in the sky. This is because of the motion of particles in our atmosphere, movement of the Earth, and variances in solar winds. Hey, did you know? When auroras occur, they occur in both the North and South Pole at the same time. So if we go outside and I can see the northern lights, they're actually happening down in certain parts of Australia and in the southern poles. The next interesting phenomenon I want to talk about was something that happened alongside the northern lights called Steve. So I made a quick PowerPoint for this one just because I thought it was pretty interesting. It's a pretty new topic and it's pretty still in the experimental works. It was formally discovered in only 2016. Like the slide says, people have been observing it for years, but it was only recently recognized scientifically like 10 years ago. It's an aurora-like glow, and it follows with the northern lights. So far, it's only been observed
somewhere
in correlation
cool,
to
somewhere
northern lights,
unique to see
and
sights
I'm
that
still
maybe
not
you
sure if
haven't
it
quite
occurs
seen
on its
before in your
own.
country. Maybe you're from
Steve
middle of
is
the
a
state,
hot,
let's say like
glowing
Nebraska.
And
Or
Steve
maybe even like
stands for
Chad in Africa.
strong
What
thermal
you need
emission
is to see
velocity
the northern
enhancement.
lights. And what I have
So
an
why does Steve
experience
exist?
from
We know
Stuart
it's a bunch of
Madeline
hot, glowing
Voyage
gases,
Compagnie
and
is to
it's
take
formed
you
under
there.
similar
Now, let's
conditions
figure
as
out
the
when.
aurora
You want to go
borealis.
from,
It started
let's
off
say
with
September
like
to April. Those are the
strong waves of
darkest
plasma.
months of the year.
Happens
That's
is
when you're
really
going to see the
powerful
lights
and strong waves
perfectly.
of plasma
And you want to
in the
go
upper
from 9
atmosphere
p.m. to 3
clash with
a.m.
natural gases,
Anytime
and this is
other than
hundreds
that,
and
you're not
hundreds
going
of
to see them very
kilometers
well.
up
You
in
want it to be
altitude.
dark, very dark,
This
maybe even a
plasma
little bit
clashing
dimly
with the
lit.
natural gases
But for the
so
most
high
part,
up in the air,
dark, so
it's the
don't
sun
go. You don't want to go to the city.
sky.
You don't want to go
And
to
you can see
Saskatoon
it
or
has
something
like
like
little
that. You want to
purpley
go
with like
in the
it's
countryside,
been
maybe
described
where there's
online
not
as
really a
like
lot
a
of
green
people
kind of
around.
picket fence
So
pattern, and I like
let's
that
think
analogy, so
here.
I kept it
Where are
in
the
the
best
slide
places?
here.
Alaska,
And
Tasmania,
it's not
Canada,
always been
New
observed
Zealand,
with the picket fence.
Switzerland,
Sometimes it
all
follows,
those
but
fun
for the
places.
most part,
That's where
it's
you're
just
going
a
to
solid
want to go.
streak of purple, violet, mauve coloring. Purple are the charged particles that are heated, and the pickets are the electrons moving down into the atmosphere. So they're the ones that are being lost by that purple streak. Steve usually occurs at lower latitudes, and they're easier to see farther south than the aurora oval. So it looks like I've just mentioned the aurora oval, and I haven't talked about it previously, so I'm going to skip to this next slide here, and we're going to take a peek about that. So the aurora oval, it's just the weather network for the auroras. It's based on the solar winds and magnetic field conditions of the upper atmosphere, and scientists have come together to determine the northern lights, like what path it'll take. It's both in the northern and southern pole. I included a little blip on the bottom, spaceweatherlive.com, and honestly, it's pretty cool. It shows you where you can be to experience the northern lights to the fullest and how intense they might be. Of course, it's just like any other weather network, like you check your weather app and it says there's a 30% chance of rain kind of thing. So what's the difference between the northern lights and Steve? Well, the aurora is made up of charged particles, and that's what makes it glow. However, Steve is made up of hot gas, and that's what makes it glow. Steve has only been observed to be with the mauve and purple streak, and then kind of like the green picket fence once in a while the auroras have a pretty big variance with the colors. They can be blue, violet, reds, greens, all of the above. Another thing is that they're very wavy and ribbon-like. They're constantly moving and shifting, while Steve is just like a straight line, like a straight streak in the night sky. And then a blaring one, the auroras can and they will appear without Steve, while Steve has only ever been observed with an aurora. And with the auroras, they will appear anywhere within the oval. They will occur anywhere within the aurora oval, and Steve occurs usually like equator ward of the aurora oval. So why is it named Steve? Of course, I gave you the long-winded name before, strong thermal emission velocity enhancement. It was actually named Steve for an interesting reason. So there were a bunch of Canadian aurora enthusiasts, Go Canada, from Alberta, and they named it Steve from an animated movie called Over the Hedge. It was a reference because in the movie Over the Hedge, there's these animals, they see this giant hedge that mysteriously appears, and they have no idea what it is. They're pretty scared of it, they're really frightened, so they called it Steve. These Albertan aurora enthusiasts just kind of went down the same path and they decided to choose Steve as well, just because it had an element of the unknown. It kind of scared them. Of course, this was all prior to when it was actually scientifically recognized, so prior to 2016. And it ended up being kept as Steve when it was scientifically recognized as just a homage to them. So this was my little blip. I just included a few more photos of just Steve. Interesting. I've never seen it, and if I have seen it, I haven't recognized it in my mind. I definitely want to take a look at now after reading about it and learning about it, because I think that's kind of cool. They're still discovering new things even though it's been in front of us for thousands and thousands of years. I just thought that was an interesting addition, that the Northern Lights always just aren't like one like glittering glowing thing. Like different auroras occur differently.